Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher, and the final spec we have to look at for the Shaman, Restoration, the big healer. You know what? Looking back over it, this is the final healing video I need to have a little final look at for you guys before WoD launches in a few weeks, is that I've only done a couple of positive healer reviews. Wow! I didn't realise that every time I play healer, it's like, oh, it's such doom and gloom, besides a couple of specs. And yeah, healers are having a great time of it in WoD so far, it's got to be said. Although some of the specs have been buffed, like this is competitive now, it's still looking a little bit ropey for the Resto Shaman. I know you guys want me to bring you good fortune and good news. I understand that. Believe me, I do. I don't want to be the guy who sits here like, guys, just give me a minute, okay? Real talk. Real talk, right now. This is the situation, okay? It's not my fault, but this is how it is. So, as you can imagine, this is not that positive. I'm sorry! It's not me! It's not me! It's not the way, it's just not how it's meant to be. Little caveat, of course, gameplay in the background, of course, is a Resto Shaman, but it is not representative of how it will be played in a raid. Typically, healing in a 5-man does not translate well into what it looks like in a raid, and all the raids are currently closed, so that is a bit of a bummerino. I certainly wouldn't be taking things like Storm Elemental Totem in a raid. That would be ridiculous, or probably even Ancestral Swiftness. But as it is, that's what it is, just to show you some healing going on. Right then. Right, where do we start? Where do we start with this bastard? Oh my god. Okay, so let's talk about the talents. When we previously looked at the Resto Shaman, we made several suggestions when Blizzard was actively accepting feedback from people like myself. Yeah, we managed across many classes to actually instigate a lot of changes across many classes, and we did really well in early beta. Unfortunately, early beta is now late beta, and now we're at the stage where it's like, no more. It's just time to balance stuff. That's it. We're done taking feedback. We're done with your suggestions. It's over. And sadly, some of the restoration stuff we put forward has been missed out, such as, why does Storm Elemental Totem exist? Why does it suck so bad? Who the fuck thought we needed another totem of elementals? Why? Other questions like, Elemental Blast for Restoration Shaman. Why can't I heal somebody with it? That would make it a million times more interesting than me having to do DPS on a spec that gains little to no benefit from doing DPS. In fact, it's rather bizarre how much emphasis is put on some form of damaging ability with the Restoration Shaman in order to get the benefit of quite a lot of spells. Very weird. In fact, the talent tree for Restoration Shaman, we talked about the hybridization of the talent tree across 3 different, completely different specs, and how that hasn't paid off. And Blizzard seems to have not introduced the idea of individual talents based on current spec like they have done with the others. In fact, this will be the whole theme of the Restoration Shaman going into WoD, as it's certainly showing its age. There's rust. There's rust there. The dust has settled, and it needs blowing off, man. That sounds odd. It needs dusting off. It needs something to happen to it in order to bring it up to 2014 standards, like we've seen with near enough every other healer, to be honest. I would say the other one in this situation is the Holy Paladin, whereas the other healers have all had some sort of revamp on bringing into the modern era. Restoration Shaman seems to have not done that while sticking to a basic hot, a single target heal, and an AoE heal, which is, you know, that's about as basic as it gets, guys, isn't it? That's the same kind of shit we've had since TBC. So on the talent side of things, there's a lot of clunkiness here that doesn't pay off, and it's because Blizzard's tried to make it work across all 3 specs. Things like Echo of the Elements seem like a good idea. Your spells and ability have a chance to cause your next Riptide, Unleash Life, or Purify Spirit to not incur its cooldown, but as you can now imagine, that's actually not that good. Unleash Life is, and of reset the cooldown sometimes, not so much. Riptide, not so much. Purify Spirit? Come on, really? Ancestral Swiftness was kind of there to give that little boost in the oh shit moments and give you a little bit of haste, but ultimately Elemental Mastery and on-demand healing cooldown of 30% haste is just too good in a raid environment. When you need it, it's there. You don't have to wait for it. It's on demand, and it's really what will separate you out from the rest of the team. When it comes to everything else, it's hard to argue if people are grouped up with taking conductivity, increasing the duration of healing rain. I actually like this talent. This is actually pretty cool in my opinion. So not too bad there. But then you look again at the Elemental Blast and Primal Elementalist and Unleash Fury, and it's like, nah, not too great. And then we get to our level 100 talents, and it's mandatory, right, to take High Tide. Your Chain Heal also bounces up to 2 additional targets affected by your Riptide. It's pretty much mandatory when you compare it to Cloudburst and Storm Elemental Totem. Those two don't even get a look in, which is really sad. But on top of that, with High Tide, really diminishes the value of something you guys have probably rocked with, which is the Glyph of Riptide, which is almost pointless now again. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. So, mandatory talents. Never fun, never interesting, certainly doesn't add any flavour to the gameplay. Whereas the other healers, if you look at something like a Resto Druid, have a vast majority of options to change their playstyle dramatically depending on what the encounter demands. Bit of a bummer. This leads to the next issue then, is that ultimately Restoration Shaman right now are in a pretty grim place in terms of the community. Very angry, very upset, and it's hard for me to argue with that. Oftentimes I will try and play a little bit of devil's advocate and say, you know what, if it's just a balancing issue, Blizzard can fix that pretty easily. Unfortunately, with Restoration Shaman, it's not really a case of just balancing. The problem is they've had a lot stripped away. Mana Tide Totem has been cut. Healing Tide Totem has been stripped of near enough all value. It's very difficult to see actual huge benefits when you drop a Healing Tide Totem over just dropping a Healing Stream Totem. Ascendance is practically worthless now in a raid environment. And therefore, what are you left with in terms of major DPS, major cooldowns? Just Spirit Link Totem, which is still kind of trying its best to be a really useful piece of toolkit. And ultimately, if you look back, actually, since Spirit Link Totem has been introduced, there's only been a couple of encounters, I think, where Spirit Link was really, really good and wasn't replaceable by something else. And that means, ultimately, when you're playing a Restoration Shaman right now, you can't help but feel that if you were playing something else, you would be far more beneficial to your group. And that's a horrible, horrible place to be. It's really saddening to be playing a class and playing your hardest and really maximizing your abilities and your play and thinking, you know, if I was just playing something else, I would actually be far more useful here. And that's really not the way I want to feel about my main class. This is what I do. I'm a Restoration Shaman, right? I don't want to feel replaceable if I'm playing to my max. Awful, awful situation to be in. But it's exactly where the Restoration Shaman is right now. Major factors to that are, like we said earlier, just the basic style of healing. Really basic. Something that has fallen way behind the wayside now compared to the other healers who are mixing in a huge array of different styles of healing depending on the encounters, which makes them more powerful in one scenario, and then they can alter that style of play using their different types of heals in different scenarios. When you're limited to just a hot, a single target heal, and an AoE heal, which requires people to be reasonably close, and yeah, you get really kind of screwed over. If people are too spread out, both Healing Rain and Chain Heal vastly lose value. And ultimately, judging from the math right now, the main aspect of trying to be competitive with a Restoration Shaman is really trying to snipe other healers with Healing Wave. Healing Wave is hugely powerful now. Very, very powerful. But you have to ask yourself the question, one, am I playing in a role in the game where I synergize with my brothers and I help each other and we're all out to look after each other to make sure we've all got good mana and we're all putting out the same stuff? Do I want to be playing a style which is me actually trying to screw them over? Old Dispriest. Is that actively what I'm trying to do? Do I feel comfortable with that? Maybe not. You also have to ask yourself the question, is me sniping people with Healing Wave saving their life or just trying to get my name on the healing meters? Would it have mattered if a Rejuve was on that target instead? Would he have died? Most cases, probably not. And that's never a nice place to be either. It's like my heal was there, I did it first, but ultimately it's kind of worthless maybe. And that's never a nice place to be either. So definite issues there. Also seems to be one of the specs that's kind of balanced around its set bonuses. Oh, when will the bad news stop? We've seen this several times over the course of WoD beta, is that set bonuses have played an integral part in trying to balance a class to be competitive. Very, very, very fucking ropey bridge to be walking on, Blizz. Very dangerous. All the set bonuses for the Restoration Shaman revolve around Chain Heal. You have a chance when you cast Chain Heal you have a chance when you cast Chain Heal to cast a second Chain Heal at one of the targets healed. When you cast Tidal Waves, you have an 8% chance to reduce the mana cost of Chain Heal by 75%. Woohoo! Now, you might think, oh god, are we going back to TBC Chain Heal spam? No! No, you're not. Why? Chain Heal is mad expensive. Crazy expensive. You cast a few Chain Heals, you're going to see your mana disappear, even with these buffs. And that's not funny. That's not funny one little bit, is to have this, all these set bonuses revolve around something which is actually not that great. 8% isn't really going to pay off all the time, right? 8% isn't going to pay off all the time. So, yeah, you're not going back to chain heal spam either. At the moment, the gameplay, which I'm sure many of you are interested in, is simply healing waves, healing waves. Did you get the chain heal proc? Then cast some chain heals. Try and hope and pray people are grouped enough, which generally they aren't in WoD, it's got to be said, for healing rain to make some sort of difference. And then casting the odd chain heal. Cooldowns are super weak. Will buffs save it? Will flat out buffs save it? Buffs, in terms of just making healing wave heal more, chain heal heal more, cost less mana, will certainly make Shamans more competitive and bring them back. And I think that's the important thing. Bring them back to maybe a mop kata style of play. Is that something you were hoping for? Is just to be kind of band-aid fixed in order to bring you back to a style of play you already have? I don't think so. This is moving forward for a lot of healers. They've actually been brought up to the forefront, and Resto Shaman seems to be lacking behind. Perhaps the next expansion is when they will get their big look. But it certainly feels as a casual player, and from researching heavily into the subject, that they have been slightly ignored in WoD. And I can't help but get that feeling even after just a few hours of play. Alright guys, I wish it was better news, but it can't be every day. Alright guys, bye bye.